Hi, I'm Terry, and welcome to another video. I've gotten a lot of positive response from my recent video on test shooting my 1860 Army revolver, but I have to say I liked one comment in particular in which the viewer suggested that I do a video on cleaning black powder revolvers and asked if they're dishwasher safe. Well, I don't know if they're dishwasher safe or not, but at $300 up each, I'm not going to be the first to find out. So I did a quick YouTube search on cleaning cap and ball revolvers, and quite a few videos actually came up. Some were really good, some were maybe not so good, which is usually the case. Most were several years old, in fact about 1 to 10 years old. I've also recently had a problem with my Army, which required disassembling the action down to the frame to correct. So I thought, why not kill two birds with one stone and throw in my 2 cents worth on how to clean Colt cap and ball revolvers, as well as show you how I resolved my little problem. But a single video covering this entire subject might be a bit unmanageable, so I'm going to break it into 2 parts. Part 1 will be field cleaning at the range, when I'm just wanting to get the major fouling off, gumming up the works so I can just keep on shooting. Then how to clean it up more at home once I'm finished shooting for the time being. That will be focusing on the barrel, the cylinder, and a general overview of the frame. Part 2 will be how to disassemble the action down to the frame, clean it, reassemble it. Also, once it's broke down, how to smooth the action up a little if you want to. And again, just a little demonstration about how I resolved my particular problem. And this procedure will work pretty much on any Colt series revolver from around 1847 up until around 1872. I've heard the Walker and the Dragoons do have a few little quirks about them. I've never actually owned one myself, but I have heard this from other people who have. But generally speaking, the basic procedure is the same for all Colt revolvers of that time period. Okay, so before I get started on the cleaning, just a quick demonstration of the problem that I was having. I don't carry a Colt firearm on 5 chambers with the hammer down on it empty. I carry 6 with the hammer down on the safety pin. And yes, I actually carry it that way in a holster. So if any of you safety rangers out there feel like you need to take a poop over it, do it outside, preferably out on the back 40, because that's how I carry. Now my problem was, and it could have been years before I even saw this, as long as whenever I cocked the hammer, I shot it, it worked fine, and I could cock it again and shoot the next round, then cock it again, shoot the next round. Just not a problem, all right? The problem was if whenever I cocked it, I decided for whatever reason not to shoot and set the hammer down on a cap, the hammer would not disengage and I couldn't cock it again. So as long as the nipple was empty, or I fired and blew the cap off, it would work. But if I set it down on a cap, it would lock up and I couldn't cock the hammer back. So I'm not a gunsmith. I had no idea what was causing that. But I like to tinker around with things, and I have had these apart before. So I thought I might just see if I couldn't take care of that while I'm breaking this thing down and cleaning it. But first, let's just go through the basic cleaning operations. Let's say that I'm at the range and I fired 24, 36 rounds through it, and it's starting to get a little gummy. It's getting some fouling around the front here, around the hammer, nipples, and whenever I cock it, it's getting kind of stiff. I can feel it's rubbing. You know, the trigger mechanism maybe not working all that well. It's got a little harder trigger pull. It just doesn't feel right. So I want to keep shooting though. So what I do is put it on half cock, take this wedge out, take the barrel off, okay, pull the cylinder out. Now that's field stripping. Now this I'm not going to really worry about for right now. Generally where the problems are going to run into when you're shooting is going to be the cylinder. You're going to get carbon built up here around the front. You're going to get buildup around the nipples, and you're going to start getting more misfires. You're going to get carbon built up in the barrel, and you're going to lose accuracy. So what I generally do is I keep a bottle of water with me, and I take a basic cleaning kit, and I'll just pour some water on it and take a brush, and I'll just brush off around the nipples, brush off around this ratchet. I'll brush off the carbon buildup around the front. I'll take a 45 caliber gun cleaning brush, and I'll run down the cylinders. I'll run it through the arbor. Then I'll take a swab and run through it, and then use some kind of water displacement spray. This one's called Gun Scrubber, and it's made for cleaning conventional firearms without disassembly, so it dries and leaves no residue in it. But you can also use something like a electronics cleaner, would work just fine. And you just spray that down really good. This one's already clean, so I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to show you how I do it. I'm not going to take the nipples off because I'm not cleaning it to put it up on the shelf. I'm going to go right back to shooting. But I am going to look through the cylinder here, all of these chambers, and make sure that I can see daylight through the cylinders, and if there's through the nipples. And if there's one that I can't, I'm going to take a needle, pin, nipple pick or something, and just run through it like that. Get that nice and clean. Maybe blow in it. Then I'm going to give it a light coating of oil. This is rim oil. You can use WD-40. You can use light machine oil. You can use any kind of 3-in-1 oil, anything like that. And we'll call that one done. I'll do the same thing with the barrel. I'll run the brush down the barrel, get that nice and clean. Then I'll run the swab down it, clean it up good. I'll brush around the forcing cone, around the arbor hole, just clean it up good. Maybe check the ram and make sure there's no carbon built up in here, clean that off. Look down the barrel, make sure it's clean. Then I'll just use again the water displacement spray, let that dry, light coating of oil, and then I'm going to turn to the frame. Now, assuming that the action is working well, it's not gumming up, it's not sticking, doesn't feel like it's got a cap or something stuck in the, down in it. I'm not going to take this apart at the range. There's really no need to. Very little corrosion or dirt can get down in here. Water is really your biggest concern, water and rust. But you're not going to get a lot of carbon fouling all down into this mechanism. You'd be surprised how little dirt actually gets down in there. But we will want to clean out around the ratchet hand here. You'll want to clean out around this part of the frame, around the arbor. You want to cock it. You want to clean, back in here. You don't want to pour water on this because we're going back up. We're going to go back into shooting. But just clean all of this up. Maybe take a brush to it if it's really built up good. Clean off the sides, right? Water displacement spray, a little oil, maybe a little spray oil. Wipe everything off good. Then we're going to grease this arbor up, and you can use any kind of grease you want, really. You can use even axle grease, you can use Vaseline, gun grease, lard, which is my personal favorite. I'm just going to put a little lard on there. And I'm going to be taking this thing apart again soon here, so I'm not going to put a lot on it. Put the cylinder back on, put it on half cock, put the cylinder back on, rotate a little, make sure everything's good. Put the barrel back on, tap that down nice and tight. Put the wedge back in, and we're good to go back to shooting. Okay, so let's say that I've spent a long day at the range. I've put some bullets through this thing, and I'm back home now, and I want to clean it up good so I can put it back on the shelf for a few days or a week or however long it takes before I can get back out to shoot it again. Well, again, I'm going to just disassemble it the way I did at the range. I'm just going to take the barrel off, slide the cylinder off, and I'm going to clean it essentially the same way, except in a little more detail. Now my favorite cleaning solution actually is just a bucket like this, hot water and soap, very hot water, steaming hot water. And I also like to use Dawn dishwashing detergent, but you can use any soap you want. Just hot soapy water is really the best thing that I've found, low cost, for cleaning black powder, carbon, and residue off of these gun parts. And we just dip that into water. You let it soak for a couple minutes. You can put the barrel down in there. Do not put the workings down into it. Let that soak for a few minutes. Then again, we're just going to scrub it down really good. And at this point, I might take the nipples off. Take my little trusty nipple wrench here and just break the nipple loose. Take the nipple off. Okay, I can scrub this down with a brush now. I can run a nipple pick through it, clean off the threads. I can also take, say, something like a Q-tip and some hot soapy water, and I can rub in here around behind it in the mounting section there. Then I can put a little spray oil back on the nipple and put it back in, and I can do that with all 6 nipples. Don't tighten it down too much, but just snug it down. Do that with all 6. Cylinder's good to go. Same thing with the barrel. Run the brush down it a few times. Make sure I get all the carbon buildup and residue out of it. Run the brush through the arbor hole. Take the swab, run that down it, run it here. Take my brush, scrub around the forcing cone, around the arbor, around the ram facing. I might check the workings here in the seat. Make sure that's all clean. Get everything nice and clean. Look down the barrel. Water displacement. Little spray oil. That's done. So now on the frame, again, if I've had it taken apart recently and during the time at the range I did not have any problems with the operation, like there's nothing, doesn't feel like there's something down in here, like a cap gumming the works up, I'm probably not going to take it apart. Just clean it the way I did. Again, I'm not going to immerse this in water. I'm just going to take the brush it down really good. I might use the gun scrubber on it because this will dry without leaving any residue at all. And just visually inspect it and clean off any residue. Get down in here around the hand, the ratchet hand, down deep in here below the hammer, sides of the hammer where it might stick. And then basically call that done. Again, put some grease back onto it. Put it on half cock. And then we reassemble it the same way we did at the range. Give it a light coating of oil, and you can take some liquid oil, for example, and a cotton ball and just kind of rub it down with it all over it. Work the action a few times, make sure everything's good, and put it up on the shelf. But let's say I think there is something down in here, or I haven't had it apart for a while, or I'm having that problem that I had earlier where if I let the hammer down on a cap, I couldn't pull it back. Well, we're going to go into that in part 2 of how to break this down, how to repair it, and how to clean the action up on it a little bit. So, thanks for watching, and stick around for part 2.